Hello world, and welcome to Learning Java, one byte at a time. This is video 19 in a tutorial series geared at bringing the wonderful wide world of Java to those with little or no programming experience. In the last video we covered constructor overloading and constructor chaining, and now we're finally ready to dive into our project and start by designing our car class, which is how we're going to construct our car objects for our car bluebook application. So by going into the Notepad++ application, we'll have open a car.java, which is going to represent our car class. Knowing this is going to be part of a larger project, we're going to have more than one classes using one another. We're going to need to include this under one package. So let's be sure to declare the package called car bluebook. And then we'll go ahead and declare our class. Now inside of our class, we know that we're going to be creating a car object, and like the last car object, we'll have a make and model, but we're not going to have a year. We're going to have the year assigned separately, so we're going to actually have a separate third value called the price of the car, and this is going to be the base model of the car. It will be a make, model, and price, and from there we'll begin to define other features of the car. So let's declare a private string called make and model, and a private double, and we're using a double because with the price we're likely to run into some math that will end up with decimals, so we need to make sure to have a numerical value that's capable of representing decimals. And we're making those variables private because we want to make sure that they're only accessible from within the car class. Then of course we're going to use getters and setters to be able to access those fields through code encapsulation. So now going right ahead to declare our constructor, we're going to call public car. We're going to assume that we know the make and the model and the price of the car, so we'll pass those through as parameters to the constructor. And rather than using the this keyword at this point to assign those values, we're going to go ahead and create the setters and getters, and so we're going to assume that we have a set make, set model, and set price, which we will define in a minute. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and use the this keyword to call the parameter on that object, set make, and we'll pass through whatever car make was. Likewise, car model, we're going to pass through whatever it was that the car model was, and we'll set the price with car price, like so. All right, and let's go ahead and create those setters so that this is still pretty clear. The setters, of course, will be public because we're going to need those to be accessed from outside the class. We'll pass that through as CMake, and then from here we'll assign the make of the car equal to whatever CMake is. Furthermore, we will do set model, also accepting a string that we're going to refer to as CModel, and using the this keyword to assign the model. And finally, we're going to set the price, accepting a double that we'll call cPrice, and this keyword, like so. So that is our setters, which we've actually referenced up here in the constructor of the car object. And just for clarity, we'll go ahead and define our getters as well. These will also be public, but these being getters are going to have to actually return values. So let's return a string that we're going to call getMake. And this is not going to accept anything because it's actually going to be returning something. We're going to return this.make. And in this next one, we will do the model. So that's going to be a string that we're returning called getModel. No parameters, we're simply going to return the model of the object. And then down here, we'll return a double that will be the price of the car. just like this. Okay, so that is our setters and our getters for all three of those fields of the object. Again, the fields are private so that they are accessible only from the class, but the setters and getters are public so that they can be accessed from outside the class. And they are in fact being accessed right here from within the creation of the car object. So now we have a pretty complete car class that we've seen before, except in the spirit of overloading constructors and chaining constructors, how can we make this more dynamic? So now imagine that we don't know the make, model, and price of the car. What if we only know the make and model? So here we go. Let's go ahead and overload this constructor like so. We'll call the constructor the same name, but with a different signature. We're only going to accept the make and the model. We don't know what the price is going to be, and so we have a separate signature with a similar constructor, which means that if the car class is called with only two parameters, we're going to have Java bring it to this constructor, and we're going to set an arbitrary price. So again, we're going to set the make equal to whatever the car make was. We're going to set the model equal to whatever the car model was, like so. And then we're going to set the price to an arbitrary value of 0, making sure to use a decimal because it is in fact a double and it requires that decimal there. All right, so furthermore, if we knew that we knew what the make of the car was, but then let's say we don't know what the model is, right? We know it's a Chevy, but it could be, you know, a Chevy Cavalier, a Chevy Malibu. We're not really sure. We just know for sure that it's a Chevy. Let's go ahead and create another overloaded constructor that only accepts one parameter, a string that we're going to define as car make, and we're going to set arbitrary values for the other two. Now I'm setting the model of the car to null just so that it actually has a value, and we're still going to set the price to 0 because we don't want to leave it unset. And then finally, let's go ahead and overload this constructor one more time. Oh, we have to get rid of the space up here. That will throw an error. Let's overload this constructor one more time, assuming we don't know anything about the car, and so we're not going to pass through any parameters. And so that's going to lead us to setting a value of null for the make, a value of null for the model, and a value of 0 for the price. All right, so now we have our overloaded constructors, except already I can hear you saying, oh, wait, that's too verbose. What can we do about this? We can make this even more concise. We can get rid of all of this redundancy. Let's chain this constructor. We know that if they're going to create a car object with no parameters that they know nothing about, that we can use this constructor to call its own constructor and pass these values through, and we can chain it all the way up to the very first constructor. So then let's get rid of these. Let's go ahead and call the constructor for the this. So we'll call this, which is the car constructor. We're going to pass through the value of null as a single parameter string, which is in turn going to call this one and pass that null up as the car make. Furthermore, let's go ahead and call that constructor one more time here, except passing through whatever that null was there, as well as a second null, which will be the car model. So now this being a constructor that accepts two parameters is going to pass it up to here. Those two nulls are going to be passed through as the car make and the car model, but let's not stop there. Let's go ahead and call this one more time, this constructor. We're going to pass through car make, which we know will be null, car model, which we know will also be null, and then our arbitrary price value. So now we have a constructor with 3 parameters being called, which will bring all of this finally up to the very first constructor. It will pass through the null, and the 0, and using our excellent code encapsulation, it will set those values accordingly. And so now we have not only overloaded this constructor to make it super flexible, but we've also done some constructor chaining to make it less redundant and more readable. And so here we have an excellent car class. This is going to create a really super cool car for us. And so that's probably good for one video. Hopefully this was clear, it was informative and entertaining. Of course, as always, the message section is a great place to message me with any comments or questions, and look forward to seeing everyone back in the next video. This is going to be quite a fun project. Have a wonderful night.